Welcome to this explainer on the visionary new requirements for consumer privacy by design. Today, we are diving straight into the International Organization for Standardization 31700 standard. Specifically, we're looking at Part 1, which lays out the high-level requirements for consumer goods and services. So we're going to explore exactly how organizations can take data protection from being, just a total afterthought and transform it into a foundational architectural element based on three guiding pillars: empowerment and transparency, institutionalization and responsibility, and ecosystem and life cycle. Let's get right into it. Let's actually start off by looking at the real authority driving consumer protection on a global scale. The International Organization for Standardization and the International Electrotechnical Commission Joint Technical Committee, alongside the Canadian Mirror Committee, they represent this incredibly serious, globally coordinated effort. Their goal? To standardize exactly how our data is treated and to truly champion consumer protection in the field of privacy by design. Now, this brings us to an incredibly pressing question. How do organizations actually ensure the privacy needs of the consumer are met within an increasingly complex digital economy? Look, we live in an era of interconnected devices, shared platforms, and massive cloud applications. If a consumer's information is compromised just because of some lax or outdated practices, the consequences for that individual can literally be devastating. And the reputational damage to the organization, that's often completely irreversible. So the stakes for consumer trust are incredibly high, and there is this immediate, absolutely crucial need for a definitive corporate shield against data vulnerabilities. You just can't rely on reactive measures anymore. You have to build products that anticipate and neutralize risks long before they even hit the market. And that leads us to the formal definition of privacy by design. This concept completely redefines product development. Basically, privacy is no longer just tacked on at the end. It's a core architectural element spanning a product's entire existence. Now, we are explicitly talking about personally identifiable information here. That is any data that links back to a real living person. This methodology means engineers and business leaders absolutely have to integrate privacy from the very first brainstorming session all the way to the end of the product's life. It's really an unbroken chain of custody and protection.
So the actual benefits of privacy by design are realized through three guiding principles. We have empowerment and transparency, institutionalization and responsibility, and finally, ecosystem and life cycle.
Let's dive right into that first pillar, empowerment and consumer transparency. This principle directly addresses the huge, growing consumer demand for accurate privacy assertions. You see, true empowerment means you are designing privacy controls that are centered entirely around the consumer's daily experience. Just think about an online retailer or maybe a fitness application tracking your health metrics. The organization has to provide a genuinely informative privacy statement that explains exactly how consumers can exercise their rights, and they need to do this before any personal data is ever collected. The context of the consumer is literally everything here. The product should only collect the absolute bare minimum of information it needs to actually operate. Which brings us to consumer choice. Giving consumers configurable privacy settings puts the power directly back into their hands. Imagine a family using smart locks for their home's front doors. Each family member, or even a visiting guest, might have completely different privacy needs when it comes to when their entry and exit data gets logged. The product actually has to make these features available, so users can tailor the whole setup precisely to their own unique privacy objectives. It's a total game changer. And then there is the transparency aspect. Transparency requires absolute, crystal clear communication. You have to ensure that vulnerable populations like minors, the elderly, or folks with lower technical literacy fully comprehend exactly how their data is handled. We have to move way beyond that complex legal jargon and start using accessible, frequently asked questions and clear user interface labels in multiple languages. The consumer must never, ever be left in the dark about how their personally identifiable information is being processed. Okay, moving right along to pillar number 2, institutionalization and corporate responsibility. Here is where we shift from that external consumer experience to the internal corporate machinery that actually makes privacy by design a reality. Privacy by design mandates a very clear boundary of responsibility. It ensures that consumer needs become a hard, functional requirement right alongside business interests. Think about a product launch. You've got marketing teams, software developers, hardware engineers, financial executives, the whole shebang. Well, this standard dictates that the privacy needs of the consumer must have an equal seat at that table. It ensures privacy decisions are consistent, systematic, and fully documented through rigorous change management and quality systems. And look, accountability has to start at the top. You need decisive leadership to successfully operationalize these robust privacy norms. You can't just toss privacy onto the desk of a single junior engineer and expect it to work out. Executive leadership has to mandate these design methodologies and provide the actual resources to get it done. Documented information, things like privacy risk assessments, data flow maps, and acceptance decisions, absolutely must be approved by the relevant authorities within the organization and protected from any loss of confidentiality or integrity. Plus, organizations have to maintain an open, well-resourced line of communication for consumers long after a product is launched. This means having an accountable person who ensures technical support teams are properly trained. If a consumer has an issue with a privacy setting, or if there is a serious complaint, there have to be independent alternative mechanisms available to resolve it. The responsibility definitely doesn't just end when the product is sold. You've got to support the consumer throughout their entire relationship with the product. And that brings us to our third and final pillar, ecosystem and product lifecycle. This is where we really expand our focus to the big picture of data flow. Your product does not exist in a vacuum, right? It might interact with a virtual assistant running in a home, which then communicates with organizational servers, all operating across multiple life cycles. It's like a giant puzzle. This massive, complex network requires multifunctional collaboration and a really deep understanding of every single touchpoint where data might potentially be vulnerable. And when we look at the timeline, the data lifecycle follows a very rigorous sequence from its origination all the way to secure disposal. During the initial design stage, organizations have to integrate privacy into the conceptual framework before development even starts. This is where privacy risk assessments are completed. Then, in the active operation phase, the product securely processes personally identifiable information, controls are monitored, and consumers are kept fully informed of any risks. Finally, in the product retirement phase, when active support is withdrawn or maybe an upgrade is installed, any associated personally identifiable information undergoes secure destruction. There has to be a clear protocol for handling that remaining data. Now, what about third parties? Because our products rely so heavily on shared platforms and cloud applications, third-party vendors must be held to the exact same uncompromising standards. Their role is absolutely central, and they can pose significant privacy risks. That's exactly why organizations have to implement strong third-party governance mechanisms. We're talking about strict clauses in contracts and service-level agreements that clearly define third-party obligations, especially if a consumer decides to exercise their rights to their personal information or if the product itself is retired. Regular audits and reviews of these third parties, they are totally non-negotiable. Ultimately, a product's lifecycle does not truly end until the data it gathered is safely and permanently neutralized. End of use can happen if a product simply breaks, if it gets sold secondhand, or even if the consumer passes away. In literally every single one of these scenarios, the International Organization for Standardization rules dictate that there absolutely must be mechanisms in place for the prompt and secure destruction or deletion of the data. We have to ensure it never falls into unauthorized hands. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. When privacy is designed into the very architecture of your consumer products from day one, does compliance simply become your greatest competitive advantage? Adopting these International Organization for Standardization guidelines isn't just about covering your bases or basic protection. It is literally the ultimate blueprint for leading the future digital economy. When you truly integrate privacy by design, championing consumer empowerment, institutionalizing corporate responsibility, and strictly managing that entire digital ecosystem, you build an absolute, unbreakable foundation of trust. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope this structured journey empowers you to rethink exactly how privacy can elevate your products and services moving forward.